So, okay, thank you for having me as a member of CST. This is something we're doing every month, and it's an exciting thing, and I'm glad to be trying to help a little bit here as far as helping folks understand what they can do with their spirituality by using the internet. So that's the plan today. And I thought I would start this with a 5-minute meditation from Second Breath, which is an app that you can find on your iPhone. You can put it on the iPad as well, obviously. And I would imagine if you don't have an iPhone, it would work on Samsung, although I have not tried that. But it's a 5-minute meditation. It's free, and it'll just give you a taste of what a guided meditation from Second Breath is like, okay? So I'm gonna try that right now, and hopefully with any success, this will work.
You're invited to close your eyes. And as you do, see if you can sense the muscles around your eyes release. Let your whole body go kind of noodly, releasing any tension from the top of your head down to the bottom of your feet. Allow your forehead to melt and let your eyes go spacious behind your closed lids. Unhinge your jaw slightly. Let your shoulders soften and melt. Allow any tension in your stomach to be released. As you breathe in, allow that tension to melt. As you breathe out, allow your stomach to unbrace all the more. Allow your legs to be at ease. Let any tension or restlessness just kind of float away. Allow your body to become very still. Now notice the sounds around you. Are they soft, loud, constant, maybe abrupt? Are the sounds quick or slow? If there are no sounds around you, just listen intently to the silence. Notice that these sounds really have little to do with you. You're present and hearing. The sounds arise and then disappear. And now go back to your still body. Allow yourself to rest into the stillness. And now go back to the sounds. Sounds are changing. Movement. Stillness in your body. Change. Movement in the sounds. And notice these two dynamics within you and around you. Now in the silence, with your body grounded and your heart aware and your mind open, notice these two qualities in your awareness, stillness and movement, always with us. Now hear the words of Scripture from Psalm 46 as you hold steady in the midst of change. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we shall not fear. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. And as your time of practice now comes to an end, be encouraged by the work that you've done. It's in creating space through spiritual practice that our lives experience transformation, not only for our benefit, but the benefit of the world. May your day unfold in beautiful ways.
I want to wake you all up. So that's an example of using technology to find our center. And CST got to know this group. The fellow who actually did the meditation, his name is Greg Farland, and he's an Episcopal priest up in Greensboro, North Carolina. And they've been doing Second Breath as an entity within the Trinity Church there for about 25 years. So they've become sort of our strategic partners. They've been very helpful to us. We've gone through seminars with them. And this is one of the things that they provide. Now, if you go online on your, for your phone, let's say, it's an app. So you can download it for free. But there are other services, if you want to, you can actually pay monthly. I think Meg may have signed up for it beyond just the free. I don't want to put you on the spot, Meg, but so it's one of the tools, and I use it quite frequently. And there's a 5-minute, there's a 10-minute, and there's a 15-minute meditation. So the whole idea is that you can do it anytime. If you only have 5 minutes, which for most of us is a lot of the time, you can do it. It's real quick. And I think it's a refreshing way to kind of get back centered and within yourself. So that's just one example of using the internet for meditation. Just a little background. My history, business-wise, has always been in technology. I didn't plan that. That's just how it ended up. I ended up getting hired by General Electric early on, and they trained me out in Phoenix to be a computer person and stuck me in a suit and sent me out to San Francisco to help an executive running the Bank of America account, which is a big account for them. GE was pretty much a technology-driven company, so they were selling their computers mainly to technology companies, and B of A was like a big deal. So I ended up going out there, and I was the coffee guy. I could go downstairs and get the coffee for the account executive very well. I was really good at it. But I did that for a while, and then Honeywell bought our company. And so I worked for Honeywell in Silicon Valley on my own, basically, and I had learned how to do it. They shipped me off to Oregon. I was in Oregon, ran an office there for about 4 or 5 years. And when I came back, I know, like anything, change kind of adjusts your thinking. And so I ended up looking at what's going on in the Valley, which was hard to miss. I mean, when I started in the Valley, it was pretty much an orchard. I mean, there was Stanford University in Palo Alto and the airport in San Jose, and everything in between was just a big orchard. So it, slowly but surely, that orchard started becoming a technology center. And I always remember Intel, which was a name that I didn't know. Here I'm driving around the Valley, you see this Intel. Who was Intel? National Semiconductor. All these semiconductor companies were putting their headquarters in Silicon Valley. They were starting there, growing, and it just mushroomed. And so in this process, I'm calling on a lot of these accounts, and I got a phone call from somebody I'd been meeting who started up a company called Apple. And he said, we're looking for guys. We want to try to be more than just a home computer. So they ended up hiring me to be one of their sales types. And that's how I got started at Apple. That was in 79, in the very early days. And I stayed with them till 85 and decided at the time, you may or may not remember, Apple was going through some challenges. We had announced 2 products. Both of them were phenomenal in technology and concept, but there was no software that ran them. One of them was called Lisa. That was in 83. And then the Mac came out in 84. And, it made Time Magazine's cover of the year. And, it was a great product, but we had no applications to sell with it. So it was sort of going nowhere. And another friend contacted me. He had gone to work at a company called Sun Microsystems. That was a startup out of Stanford University. Sun stood for Stanford University Network. So I ended up going to work for them. And I have to say, as much as I loved Apple, Sun was really my love. That was one of the best companies I've ever worked for. Great people, a lot of them still good friends. But it got me involved in the beginning of this thing called the network, because Sun was actually connecting their computers to the network. They were the very first one to try that. And it was mainly because we were selling to engineers who were collaborating with one another. The CERN lab in Switzerland wanted to talk to the Xerox lab in Rochester. And this was a very common thing among engineers, but Sun was at the heart of that. And many of the guys that joined us at the company joined us from these research labs. So they brought all these ideas with them. And it was just a phenomenal place to work and a great experience for me. So that's sort of, my beginnings as a technology person, even though unlike you guys, I don't get into the nuts and bolts of it. I'm an inquisitive, curious person by nature. So, I'm always checking things out, and having the ability, like all of us, to have an internet that can take us anywhere we want to go is just an incredible tool. So it's very valuable. When I look at the tools, and I guess this is, we all have to look at the network, and in my case, YouTube, because I think that's really the best tool out there for us. Although Google's great too. You really have to think about what you want to do with it. In my case, I dabble with it in so many different ways. I'm looking at cars, I'm looking at, computers, I'm looking at, my kiteboarding equipment. I research everything using YouTube. You could do that on Google, but the nice thing about YouTube, as many of you probably know, it's visual. So when you get on it, it's just like running Google, but you can search for anything the same way, and you'll get up all of these opportunities to view things. Excuse me. So that's the one benefit. The other benefit is you can not only search, but you can subscribe, because anything out there is basically a channel. So for example, you're familiar with using the St. Boniface stream every Sunday. We started that using a product called Boxcast, which was sort of a proprietary network that allowed us to stream our service on Sunday. Well, since Jesse's taken this thing over, we now do it on YouTube. So St. Boniface has its own channel. So if you go up on YouTube later on today or whenever, you can sign up for the St. Boniface channel and just click subscribe. And from that point on, those subscriptions will just pop up on your screen whenever you go to look for them. You don't have to go search for it anymore. So there are other handy ways of doing things with it that are great for the average person. So my subscription list is probably, I can't tell Betsy this. There's probably 35 or 40 subscribers or channels that I play with, all for different reasons. So it's just a handy way to operate. And when you look at it from the perspective of spirituality, I started doing that with our book group, the Barnabas book group. Some of you may remember this. We in the beginning, we really got hooked on Rohr. And still, I think every one of us who read any of Rohr's books love them. There's something about the way he describes spirituality that we all get. And not only the way he describes it, but he's if you get to see him in YouTube like we have, he's such a personality. I mean, he's laughing and giggling and, making mistakes, and he's just so real as a person. So what happened is I ended up looking on the web, on YouTube, for things that might pertain to Richard Rohr that the book group would like to see. And, we'd read the chapter every week and we discuss it, but this would be a little departure. So I found a couple of things on one of the books we were reading that had to do with Rohr, showed it instead of reading or discussing the chapter that Sunday. We ended up watching the video and everybody loved it. I mean, we really got a lot out of it because we suddenly had an opportunity not to just read the text that the author wrote, but actually see him and see what the person was all about. So that was a wonderful experience. And it was really my first taste of getting into spirituality. And then from there, I ended up going into a number of different things. Several of us were interested in the Enneagram. Again, I didn't know anything about it, nor did anybody else, but you could get up on the web and within, 15 minutes, you could find several subscriptions to different authors, Rohr included, who were doing seminars on the Enneagram. So if you wanted to learn about it, that was a great way to get started. So we did that, and I did a lot of that. I've got to look at my list. I'm going to forget half of the things that I have that I do here. Let me see. TED Talks. TED Talks are probably another one of those great finds. If, on any subject, you can find a TED Talk. And what I love about them is most of them are 15 minutes. So they're not, you can find some that are an hour long. And those, for most people, including me, are very difficult to get through. But 15 minutes, you can do that. And they're just so enlightening on any topic that you can think of, whether it be current events, whether it be spirituality, religion, whatever it might be. There's several topics you can go to. So I would definitely advise anyone to look at that. I'm losing my voice here. I'm sorry. Celtic spirituality. Being raised by an immigrant Irish mom and a dad who was raised in Ireland, but was an American, I love everything about Ireland. So I'm very interested in Celtic spirituality. Brother John's, one of our first talks on Saturday was actually Brother John's talk on Celtic religion. So that's a great one to look into. Anything Rohr. I mean, Richard Rohr to me is a wonderful spiritual leader, and down to earth and easy to follow, and just has so many directions that he can take you. Matthew Fox is one that we started getting involved in this year. We read a book called Julian of Norwich, and it was a wonderful book, but it was Matthew Fox's rendition of it. So, and he did a wonderful job. I think we all really enjoyed it and found it very helpful. But in the process, I've looked into to Matthew Fox on YouTube. And he's a very interesting man. He's got a lot going on when it comes to spirituality outside of his writing. He has a thing called the Cosmic Church. And the Cosmic Church is probably a little beyond some of us. It's a little bit way out there, but it's his concept. And he really believes that as church moves on, we're going to see more and more of that in the future and less of just the straight brick and mortar traditional church that we have now. Now, the Pope decided he probably wasn't a good fit for the Catholic Church, so they excommunicated him several years ago. But he's just a brilliant man, an academic, very close friend of Rohr, and one that I think is worth investigating if that's something you wanted to do. With the Enneagram, the two writers that most of us have looked at is Russ Hudson, and his book was Wisdom of the Enneagram. And the other one is Beatrice Chestnut. Now, she's a PhD. She approaches it a little differently. I'd say that Russ's book is more, gives you kind of a layout of what the Enneagram is all about in a very good way. I'd say Beatrice gets into it in a little more depth. So, but they're both good. There's one, this is one that Denise here gave me that she may have talked to you about, but it's one of my absolute favorites. It's the Canterbury Cathedral morning prayer. Now, if you think about that, we are now in a global church. You know, we have morning prayer every week with St. Boniface, and that's a wonderful thing. But if somebody wants to go to another church, they can, and it can be anywhere in the world. And that's an incredible capability. But anyway, the priest in charge of it his name is Robert Willis, and we're going to lose him, and that's a shame because he is really tremendous. I'm sure the people that they get to replace him will be just as good, but he's been a real gem of a person and just a wise man. And when you go to watch it, it's on the campus of the church, but it's also a very big operation. And they must have a farm on there, because when you're watching it, usually he's feeding the pigs. He's got a rooster crowing. He's got chickens running around. There's always a cat. So it's just a very interesting mixture of, you know, doing your morning prayer and getting your spiritual enlightenment, and at the same time seeing all this beauty around you, and very peaceful. So I would definitely suggest you look into that one. That's a wonderful example of using the internet. We talked about Second Breath a little bit. So if you're going to look at apps, you know, now we're talking about an iPhone or a Samsung. That's probably one of that is my favorite. I use it just about every day. And it's just it's a way of tuning in, you know, when you need it. I'll go on a bike ride and kind of loosen up and feel the joy and get a smile on my face. And usually when I come home, I'll do a meditation, and that just makes my day so much better. So Second Breath is great. The other one, and this one I'm passing on to you because I have so many people contacting me, usually from the book group, asking me about what's somebody's address. It's usually John Butterfield, but we'll give him a break. You know, what's their so-and-so's address? What's their phone number? Well, we have something on the iPhone called Church Life that you can download the app. It's free. And it'll bring you the directory for St. Boniface Church. It'll also give you the calendar. It'll give you all kinds of information that's handy if you want to. You can do the web as well, but I find using this with your iPhone is a whole lot easier and a lot quicker. If I haven't done it in like 3 or 4 years, so I'm pretty sure you have to have a password that Lisa can provide you to access it, to bring in the St. Boniface part of it once you have the app up. But it's very easy to do, and I would strongly suggest you do it. Again, when I try advising someone on how to find their spirituality on the web, I mean, that's such a huge topic, and we all approach it a little differently. But I think the key is that, one, that you have a practice, because if you don't have a practice, then none of this is going to be of any real value. But if you have a practice using the web, using tools like YouTube, or an app like Second Breath, is just an added helper for you to get your spirit, to get into that spiritual level that you need to be at. And it certainly has helped me. One final thing, somebody, I think it might have been Donna said this earlier, the virtual church. Virtual church is alive and well. We are so lucky, so fortunate at St. Boniface that we had the forethought to have a streaming system put together back, I think we started in 2015. And we were streaming the live service from 2015 right up through the COVID virus. If you were in a church that didn't have any of that set up, that would be a real challenge. And we were fortunate also that the vestry and Wayne decided, again, before we even knew about the virus, we really need to enhance this. We need to make it a better system. And Jesse has done a phenomenal job. He's so competent technically, and he's really put this thing together to where, I mean, we can go in any direction we want with the equipment we have right now. So we went through a terrible experience with the virus, and we ended up being able, really not missing too much of a beat, even though we couldn't have church together, which is what we really all want. We at least could have it online. And, we kind of get used to the comfort of our living room with our coffee and, turning it on at 10, maybe I'll do it at 2. And when you look at that from a global standpoint, some of our members, one in particular, she's they lived in Seattle. She was very much involved in the cathedral out there. She goes to the service here at 10, at church. And then at about 2 or 3, she turns on the cathedral service out in Seattle. Some people will tune into the national church. But I guess the point is, we are already a virtual church. It's there. We're doing it. It's hard for us to sometimes accept it. It's sort of like, why aren't there more kids in church? It's one of those things that historically we've grown up with and been so fond of, and it's so important to us. It's our spiritual connection. But I think what we're going to see over the years is a more and more of a transition to a virtual church. I can't tell you what that's going to look like, but I'm convinced with the technology that's out there, it's going to happen, and it's probably the next step is virtual reality. I've seen a couple of things on one of the news feeds I get, that there are pastors who have started churches using that technology. Now, it's pretty primitive if you've ever tried it. So I don't think any of us would find it to our liking, but I think that's only the beginning. I think within the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a reality. So that's my little talk. And I would like to open this thing up to all of you to see if you have questions or if you have some other ideas that can help us. And make sure you turn on your mics when you're ready to talk. Thank you. And I can't see all the screens, so if somebody's up there, I'm assuming.
I can't see them all either.
Amanda, I see you.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, I think. Am I?
No, you're fine.
Okay, Vince, you talk about all these subscriptions. Usually, like when you subscribe to something, there's a payment involved. Are these things that you have mentioned, are they free, or how is that? How does that work?
On YouTube, they're pretty much free because YouTube, like Google, they're into the advertising world. So what they're trying to do is create an identity for themselves, a channel that's successful, that gets a lot of feeds. And then they'll have advertisers who will want to post little ads on them as time goes on. So they're pretty much free. With Second Breath, the app, there are free meditations, the 5 minute, 10 minute, 15, but anything beyond that, you're asked to pay for that. Did that help you?
As somebody that doesn't use an iPhone, although I'm always scolded for that, can I get Second Breath on the computer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Thank
and you
you
could probably put it on your, do you have a Samsung or an Android phone?
Yeah. Yes, I have an Android.
Okay, then I would think if you wanted to download the app, they provided on that operating system as well.
Okay, thank you.
Betsy's hand is raised. Suzanne.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Vince. As I was listening to you talk, Vince, and share all the different sites that that you use and the massive number of subscriptions you have on YouTube, one of the things that struck me too is in addition to all of these tools that are now available to us and these new products, one of the things that seems to come out of this virtual world that I think the pandemic kind of tossed us into is a broadened sense of community. I heard you talk about Second Breath, and I think that was also a group experience for you. And just, I know during the pandemic, we were able to have parishioners come in, well, anytime now, but because of our focus on doing church virtually and streaming, we have people joining in from New Zealand, Mexico, Spain, Norway.
Thank you.
Virginia. And it just seems to me it's changing the way we feel about our spiritual community. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that or what your experience has been.
I'm glad you said that because I wanted to mention that. Yeah, I mean, if you look at our Sunday service list, we have people signing in from Canada. We have people signing in from Spain, from New Zealand, from Norway, all over the United States. So yeah, I mean, we are a global entity, Boniface, and then just magnify that into all the other churches that we now have access to, and all of the other content that's out there that we have access to. It's like one gigantic library of spirituality that we have access, you know, and most, I would say over 90% of it's free. You know, it's available. All we have to do is start looking at it and using it. I see a bunch of hands raised.
Yeah, Donna is next.
Thanks.
So, thank you, Vince. Thank you very much. I've been looking forward to this. I'm glad that I was able to come this morning. This piece, to piggyback on what Betsy just said, I was pleased to see that a part of your presentation was going to be is on community, spiritual community. And I use the internet in a number of ways to input information, and I appreciate your giving information about the apps and a lot of things you've been doing. You know, I've been doing too, and I always love getting your emails with a suggestion for an app or a resource for more information or more practices. Something that has struck me, I think, as deeply as anything having to do with spiritual use of the internet is, as I mentioned when I first came on, just quickly, the spiritual community that we're able to have. And we really, I feel the community online just as I do in real space. And I know this because I can viscerally feel both joy and sadness, both experiencing, for example, recently when I received the mail that Michael has been going through such a tough period, Michael Piavani. And then I received the email that the surgery has been scheduled for this Wednesday. And so, all in one moment, if you will, or two moments, I experienced in Rita's and Michael's email this joy that finally, after all this time, the surgery has been scheduled, and yet the pain and sadness with my friends, with our community here around really caring for each other. And it's virtual, and as well as live. And I think that that was one of the silver linings of COVID. Well, so many of us, I think myself included, began to experience that more as as we were communicating with each other, even though because of the pandemic we couldn't come together live.
Donna, that is so great. That's exactly right. I mean, this all boils down to community in the end. You know, and you know, we have it in the book group for sure. We have it in our church. We have it, you know, online. We're doing it right now. And I mean, that's what it's all about. It's our sharing our spiritual gifts together. So thanks.
Mike, I think Mike has his hand raised next.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, Vince, first of all, thank you for just your wonderful presentation. You know, you've had a great career. I remember Sun Microsystems there early on. I mean, you were really where it was happening. But and I'm all for the technology, but I think it's you're not suggesting that in-person worship or this people-to-people contact that many of us thrive on as well is going to go away completely, or are you? Like, I mean, I noticed the first time I was physically present in church again for worship, that was like very, very important and just affected me so much. So we talked about a hybrid church before. Are we still doing a little? Are we still going? I know many, you know, people want to be in face to face and see worship live. Is that going to continue to go on?
You know, I can't. I wish I could be the expert and give an answer to you for that. But you know, from my perspective, I think what we have now is what we're going to see for quite a while. When it's not going to change. But I think what's going to happen along with it, this virtual hybrid concept is going to take shape, because a real quick example, and I've talked to Wayne about this as part of our strategic planning initiative. We have an audience out there every Sunday that's virtual. So when you're in church and you're experiencing that wonderful feeling of being part of a community together, there's this other group out there that may not be getting that same feeling. I know we feel it sometimes in the book group. We always talk about it. We're sensitive about it. So that's the part I think that we have to get better at, that we have to figure out a way to make that community whole. Even though they may not be present with us, they are. I don't know if I'm expressing myself, but that's the best I can tell you. But we're looking at 15, 20 years from now, and things are going to change. The universe isn't going to stand still. It never has.
Rita?
Good morning, and thank you, Vince. Excellent job. Exactly what I expected. Thank you. I'm going to continue on the community line, and also as someone who I view myself as being technologically backward and or ignorant, usually both. And yet what I'm finding is there's a level of comfortability that is, the more you use the web, the more you use Zoom, the more you use these devices that we have, the more comfortable you can become with it. In the community sense, the Contemplative Prayer Group that meets the first and third Wednesdays is a good example of that, because it is not a totally St. Boniface group. There are people who found us online and who have joined us. And although most of the time together is in total silence, there's an interaction that happens and an exchange that happens that is, the only word I can use is it's edifying, because so with somebody from Mexico, somebody from Chicago, somebody from Colorado, with a woman who literally wandered in, she found us on the net from Woodstock, New York. And so having these people not just be a part of this, but finding something that then they feed back into. And so the community has developed, and, it's not the kind of community that we're used to. At Boniface, when we're in church, part of church for us at Boniface is the coffee hour, it's the events, it's the time we spend getting to know people. And one of my fears originally was that wouldn't happen virtually, that wouldn't happen by using a device. But I'm finding it does. It just has a different complexion to it, but it's still as deep as those relationships that we're building in the parish center in over coffee. It just has a very different sense of how that grows. And I think, for me as an old dude, I have to be open to that. I like, seeing people and reading their aura kind of thing. And so I was afraid all that would be lost here. But I look at the conversations that have happened. This is the 25th Second Spirituality that we have done, 25 of them. And it's amazing, because every single time there's always somebody who has not done it before, as well as people who have been a part of this. But the exchange becomes lively. And when I'm in the parish hall having coffee, I can't really get around to everybody. But when I'm on Zoom and I see all of you at one time and know that who's going to comment, hands are getting raised, there's something that feels much more personally interactive for me. And that's just me. I'm not saying this is for everybody. But, my tendency in the parish hall is to stand by the door and not really get around. But on Zoom, I'm hearing each one of you individually. And that's an important concept, because I feel like I'm relating to you each individually, even though right now there are 19 of you in front of me, but I can see all of your faces at one time. And what a blessing. That is. I'm just so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for all of you being here. And by the way, Matthew Fox's app is also a daily app like Richard Rohr. They kind of follow one another. So just in case, Matt, that's there. Thank you.
Betsy? Betsy is next.
Thank you. Well, Rita, I am so glad you went before me because you addressed a lot of the question I have, which is, we talk about people coming into the service or the book group or your centering prayer from a variety of places. And Vince, you kind of made a reference to the ease of just tuning in from your living room with your bunny slippers on as opposed to actually going to church. But I think one of the other benefits of virtual church and streaming church are people that would not traditionally be able to get to church, whether they can't drive or they're laid up in rehab with something. Oh, or they're far away in Michigan. Is that what you're? I won't lay on my charades team.
Yes.
Or and it could be you have a spouse that is not able to come. So before you were faced with the choice of, do I go to St. Boniface or do I stay here on Zoom, or do I stay at home and miss it? And I think this is bringing in a third audience, people that would not be able to come to church. And so it's neat to hear you say, Rita, that that sense of community is the same but different. It is just as real. And that's very hopeful, because I, like you were saying, Vince, I don't think this virtuality is going away. I think we're going to be seeing it grow and change. But it's just heartening to me that people who would not be able to join us now can. That's all. Wasn't terribly deep.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any other hands. There are a few messages in the chat from the Zoom user to everyone, WCCM.org, the World Community for Christian Meditation is another resource I use on a daily basis, and it's free. And then Suzanne Gregory to everyone says, I get daily emails, Richard Rohr meditations, and also SSJE Brothers.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, because we're thinking more of the web, but Richard Rohr has a morning meditation that you can sign up for through his center out in New Mexico, as does Matthew Fox. And they're great. I mean, I think Rohr's in particular, he focuses on a different topic every week, and he spends the entire week going through it. So that is another really wonderful way of finding your spiritual connection.
Betsy?
Thanks. I just wanted, you said SSJE, is that St. John the Evangelist? Okay, thanks, Suzanne. And can I just, a quick thing too, Vince, you had talked about church life. It is password protected because it's for the St. Boniface Church members. So if you'll go onto the St. Boniface Church website first, scroll down to the bottom and click on the login, and then just step through what it tells you to do, you'll get a password. Lisa doesn't hand them out. The church office is not aware of them. So you'll be stepped through how to sign on and then be able to access the Church Life app through your phone or iPad.
Yeah, it's very handy. If you don't use it, it's really helpful.
Suzanne?
Unmute.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. All this is available on the Android. I have an Android phone. I just, in the course of sitting here, put second breath on my phone. I have to go in now and set it up, but I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I have Church Life on my phone as well. So I'm sure it can be put on a computer. So it's all iPhone, Android, that you can find the app in whatever version of a Play Store that you have. And I do for me, getting those daily emails from Richard Rohr have been wonderful. And Prill turned me on to the Society of St. John the Evangelist. We had one of the brothers, the vestry 2 years ago, we had a retreat, and it was a virtual retreat, and one of the brothers conducted it, and he was, I think it was Brother Ryoff. Anyway, he was wonderful. And then Prill said, "Oh, I get daily stuff from them." So I was like, okay, let's find out. So it's a daily email, which works for me. I don't have to, but it is just something to read. I tend to be a word person, but I'm going to start checking out more YouTube, because I think that's going to be really, really fun to see as well as hear. So just to let you know. Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Suzanne.
This is great.
Donna.
To piggyback on, one of the things that I really like about Richard Rohr's daily meditation that I too get on email is that it's in my inbox every morning. They send them out at night, or 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, when a lot of big groups do. And so it's there waiting for me so I can read it with my cup of coffee first thing in the morning. And if I'm going to do the second breath app, I can do that in the morning too, or I can do that whenever I want to. Sometimes I do it walking in nature because I have it on my phone.
Oh,
Grace?
Grace, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I'm also always calling my daughter and asking her questions about what to do about my email or my iPhone or something. But I just wanted to add that there's a wonderful story that Cope Garrett's son interviewed him for a YouTube presentation. And he actually did 5 hours worth, but there's part 1, part 2, whatever. Cope Garrett has had a marvelous history in his lifetime, and it's quite amusing and interesting. So, I mean, Cope is also one of our most devoted parishioners. Always there early. He enjoys hearing the choir practice for the early session before the 10 o'clock. Anyway, he's a wonderful guy. So if anybody's interested in him, even a little bit of him, it's on YouTube. Cope Garrett. That's all. Cope Garrett YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda?
Something just came to me. I ordered this t-shirt for my daughter, Julie, whom I'm always asking questions of regarding any kind of technology. And the t-shirt says, if you get tired of your parents asking you how to use technology, remember, they taught you how to use a spoon. So I'm going to give that to her and have her remember that. That's what this talk has reminded me of. Thank you.
My son won't even, he's got a degree in software development, a master's degree in it. And he thinks, he just looks at me with disgust every time I bring anything up about technology. He's like, Dad. So we can't get away from it.
Rita, you have a comment?
Actually, I was going to make a plug before we signed off for what's coming up, looking a little bit forward. So in July, our presenter will be Deacon Elise, and she's going to be talking about whether or not art has to be religious to be spiritual. and how it affects us. In August, Reg Irvine and the Mob Group will be presenting on breakfast, prayer, and spiritual friendship. That group has been going on for quite some time, so I'm interested to hear them share with us. In September, Annie Moore, some of you may know from the book group and from Taizé, Annie is going to be presenting on spirituality and recovery and how those are transforming elements in our life. And in October, John Garisto will be presenting on what it means to be healed. So that's coming up. So
Great.
mark your calendars, always the second Saturday, always at 10, and we'll be here. We're like Saturday morning cartoons, only higher level.